Hi, my name is Chuck Murray. I've been writing a book called Clarifying Confusion, a guidebook toward a new system of freedom for humanity. I'd intended to be finished with this book by now. I was going to actually quit my job to give myself enough time to finish it and get a website going and have the book up available on a website. But with the COVID 19 situation this year, it ruined my plans. And I decided that I had better keep my job. And my job takes 60, 70 hours a week of my time, giving me very little time to work on it. But it's very important for me. I want to get this information out there as widely as possible, as quickly as possible. And so I decided to just talk about my book on YouTube, which is the biggest platform and the fastest way for me to do it. And so this is what I'm doing instead. So my book is about, first of all, preparing ourselves to be able to do critical analysis and research on any subject. And I have four parts of my book. The first part is about healing, which is necessary for us to be able to really think clearly and approach any issue, doing research on any issue really honestly and as a earnest, sincere inquirer. You know, um, if we're toxic, it's almost impossible to do that, and most people can't distinguish between truth and falsehood nowadays, and that's because we haven't healed. The second part of my book is about the shadow, actually what the crazy things that we do when we haven't healed, as far as avoiding truth. And we see that in ourselves and we see it in others when others are arguing about issues, important issues. The third part of my book is about developing critical thinking skills and doing legitimate research, um, and using different research methods. And the fourth part of my book is about communicating, learning to be able to communicate the things that we learn to others meaningfully and effectively, which is extremely important. And considering the events of this year and the things that could happen this fall, this winter, with the second wave that they've assured us is coming, like, how do they know? But the second wave is supposed to come, and then the economic situation's pretty dire, and the November selection, which could really spark some bad things. And the problem with here in America and probably everywhere else in the world too is people just arguing, not listening, and we need to be able to communicate about these issues, to talk to each other if we're ever going to get anywhere positive, if we're going to work our way back in the direction of freedom, because we are very, very clearly heading towards basically this whole situation is setting us up for a worldwide totalitarianism, which is not a conspiracy theory. You can read about it from their own on their own website, the UN website, the World Economic Forum website, and what they've got planned for us. The things that are happening this year are is setting up humanity for what they're talking about. And the people running the world have got us all divided against each other. And what we need to do is these four parts of my book, and get to where we can communicate with each other effectively and meaningfully. It's absolutely essential. And it's why I'm in a big hurry to do this, to get this information out there, is because of my concerns about events that could occur this fall, this winter. And maybe we could we could curb that. We could stop it from happening if we could just learn to communicate with each other instead of just trying to win arguments. And this is something that's got to happen between people on the left and on the right. The title of my book I got from this poem here. It's actually a prayer by a Buddhist master from, I don't know, 1,000 years ago or so, 1,500 years ago, I don't remember, but his name is Gampopa. They called him the Lord of Dharma, Gampopa. And here it is. Please grant me your blessings that my mind may enter the Dharma. Please grant me your blessings that the Dharma may follow the path. Please grant me your blessings that the path may clarify confusion. Please grant me your blessings that confusion may be transformed into wisdom. And so now I want to list the people that I dedicate this book to. These are all people that made significant differences in my life. Some of them I don't even know. Most of them I don't even know who they are. But anyway, here's the list. My dear grandmother. If it wasn't for her, I would be dead or in prison for the rest of my life. She was an extraordinary person and influenced me very positively, whereas I had no other positive influences in my life during childhood. The second person is Mark Passio. His works profoundly helped me. His podcast series is available at his website, What on Earth is Happening, and I totally recommend that to every adult human being on this planet, no doubt. Another person is this lady that I fell in love with, Samira. Just being in love, I know this is a little weird, but anyway, supposedly we have these chakras and channels inside of us. And when I became in that state of being in love, it opened up all my chakras and channels. And that was right when I started listening to Mark Passio's podcast series. And I just ate it up, and I was absorbing it just like I hadn't absorbed any material in a very long time, if ever before. It was really, really extraordinary. So I dedicate this book to Samira. I dedicate this book also to J.R.R. Tolkien. His books made a tremendous difference in my life. And I dedicate this book also to all true-spirited writers and poets. I dedicate this book to all noble-hearted doctors, psychologists, philosophers, and shamans. I dedicate this book to my ideological ancestors. Now that's something I hadn't really realized until Michael Tessarion was talking about it in some of his videos. And by the way, his information can be found at unslaved.com. Totally recommend his work to every adult on this planet, no question. I also dedicate this book to all human beings who are 100% committed to truth, morality, natural law, and freedom, and who have dedicated their lives to helping others to do the same. And many of these people have suffered hardships in their lives and even been killed. And so, which makes them martyrs, So of course I dedicate this book to them. So next, I should state my impetus for writing this book and my goals I hope to achieve by writing this book. My impetus, as I've already said, is that humanity, we are right now literally on the cusp of a movement into complete worldwide, blatant, overt totalitarianism. Which simply couldn't happen if people were healed, or at least healing, committed to a path of healing. And if we knew about our own shadow side and could see the shadow in others around us and in the world around us, the darkness in the world for what it is and how it works in the world and how it is destroying our world. And that's the second part of my book. The third part of my book is being able to do research and critical thinking skills. And then the fourth part of my book, communicating these things to others. If we had already been doing this, we would never have found ourselves in this situation. And so I hope that my book isn't too little too late. And by the way, I'm not saying it's my information. I learned everything I have ever learned, I learned from others. So I'm not claiming to be like this is my information or something like that. I just hope that I can present it in, accurately, in a way that's easy for people to understand. And the 4 parts of my book, to me, seem to be the easiest way to clearly see how things need to change within ourselves and in the whole world. So that's my impetus for writing the book, is to somehow avoid the totalitarianism that is definitely coming if we fail to do these things that I'm talking about in this book. I have 4 main goals for writing this book, 4 hopes to achieve these 4 things. The first one is for me to be of as much assistance to others in doing what is called the great work, which that's what my book is about. So these 4 parts of my book I described, that's a big part of doing the great work. And to encourage them so that they don't lose heart. The second main goal is, by doing this, and many other people doing it as well, and us encouraging each other and helping each other out, I hope to reach something that I've heard of. It's called the tipping point, meaning a certain number of the human race. I've heard that it could be as little as 5%, which would be 375 million people. Of course, maybe half of those are children, so children can't be expected to do this. So cut that in half, and you're looking at around 200 million people, adults that is, 200 million adults learning to do these things. And, being completely committed to a path of healing, knowing thyself, that is the shadow, that's the second part of my book. And then the third part, really understanding critical thinking skills and being able to use the different research methodologies, and to do that as an open-minded, honest, earnest, sincere inquirer. We need 200 million people doing this, and then being able to communicate to others what they have learned effectively and meaningfully. That's just to get, like, it's as if we're on a boat, like all humanity is on this huge ship that's heading straight for worldwide totalitarianism as fast as it can be going. And so it's going to take 200 million people to just get that ship to start slowing down, and then come to a stop, and then turn around and start heading back towards freedom. And so how is this going to happen in a short enough period of time to stop totalitarianism? Well, I actually have what I think is a realistic idea. And that idea is, with as many of us as possible doing this great work now, I hope to spark off a miracle, because that's what it's going to take, is a miracle. You're talking about 200 million people, when how many are there now doing it, really doing it? I'm just now getting started. I'm just one person just now getting started doing this, and we need 200 million? How is that even possible? How is that going to happen? We need a miracle. And so I really thought about this a lot. Um, and there is a potential miracle that could happen. It's not necessarily so much of a miracle because it apparently happens in nature all the time, apparently. And and what I'm saying is based on scientific evidence. Actually, I think it's proof that a collective consciousness exists. And so there was this one experiment that was done called the 100th monkey experiment. Maybe you know all about it already. But monkeys on different islands around Japan, like one monkey started doing something. I forgot what it was, but it was a very practical new way. No other monkeys had done this before. And then suddenly, like, I don't know if it was like immediately or the next day or a few days or whatever, all the other monkeys on all the other islands were doing the same thing. This is an experiment that was done. There's no question about it, as long as they were honest about their experiment. But this isn't the only time such a thing has been observed. Rupert Sheldrake. So if you look up his work, just I don't know his website or anything, but if you look up his work, Rupert Sheldrake, you'll find he talks about something called morphic resonance, which sounds like it's something that requires a collective consciousness for that morphic resonance to be able to happen. And one of the things he talked about was these birds in different locations that could not have had any physical contact with each other started, like the monkeys on the islands in Japan. One bird started doing something. I think it was getting cream out of people's milk that was delivered to their door. And some birds were the same kind of birds. I think it was the same kind of birds. And they had been observed doing that, but nowhere else. But then the other birds in different areas of Great Britain had started doing the same thing. And there's no way they had any contact with each other. How does this happen? There must be a collective consciousness. And so I had heard a man named Jay Parker talk about the collective consciousness. He was born into a family of dark occultists, which that's something that is real. Now the occult isn't evil itself, so there's light occultists and dark occultists. It's like the occult is just knowledge about things that aren't really taught to the masses of humanity. Most people don't know much about these things. And so, lost my brain again here. So Jay Parker, whose family was a dark occult family who practiced, dark art sort of things, which he speaks about. And in fact, on Mark Passio's podcast, I think it's number 14, but it might be 14, 15, 16, 17, somewhere in there. Jay Parker tells his story on that. And by the way, Jay Parker's work can be found at thecenterpath.weebly.com. But Jay Parker had spoken of the collective consciousness, and he said that his mother had told him that the number one concern amongst dark occultists, first and foremost, above all else, they are concerned about the collective consciousness. And I think that the reason they're so concerned about it is because what happened with those monkeys and then the birds and other creatures that Rupert Sheldrake had spoken about, what had happened with them. Why couldn't that happen with human beings, especially now that humanity is just about to lose all of our freedoms? Freedom is going to be a thing of the past, and we need a miracle now. Time's up. It's 11:59:59, and there's just no more time to be wasted. And so if this could happen amongst animals, why couldn't it happen amongst humans? And with a lot of people doing the great work, which is like the stuff I'm talking about in the 4 parts of my book, and especially communicating what we learn, important things that we learn that could change the world, starting with ourselves, starting with changing ourselves, and showing the world how the world could also change. Why couldn't a collective consciousness thing like that happen where people suddenly are like, wow, how did we not realize this before? And it needs to happen now. And so that's my biggest hope, that humanity can keep a hold of the freedoms that we still have left and get back all the freedoms that we've lost. And so that's my main goal for writing this book. So it's time for human beings to do that ourselves. One thing that has a big problem with people is people think that you could just donate some resources and time to your religion or some institution, and they will do the job for us. They'll take care of things for us. We don't need to worry about those things. Just help them to do it, and then they'll do it. World peace will happen and freedom, will have our freedoms because the experts will do it. And that's wrong. We have to do it. Us common people like me. I have no credentials. It's just that I realize the situation humanity is in right now. But we can't just donate resources and our time to those institutions. We have to be the ones to make the changes in ourselves, and starting with ourselves and encouraging others to do the same. And if the 100th monkey thing happens and then it spreads to that 200 million minimum, 5% of adults in the world, then it might have, from that point, it might have a, what's that word? That mathematical term, exponential. It could really have an exponential result, could be sparked off from that. And I think that's really possible. And it would be a miracle, but it's the only hope I have. But to me, it is a realistic hope because of the scientific research that was done with those monkeys and other creatures, and the work of Rupert Sheldrake talks about. And my 4th goal for writing this book, an ultimate goal, big, huge ultimate goal, I hope happens. And it's something that must happen. And that is the complete disintegration of every government on planet Earth. It must happen. Maybe that sounds crazy, but it must happen. It has to happen for us to be able to get back our freedoms and maintain those freedoms, secure those freedoms. They say government is a necessary evil. And there's a quote by James Madison, one of the founding fathers, James Madison. He said, I forgot the exact quote, but basically he was saying, people are unruly, and so we have to have a government because people will not behave themselves. So a lot of people agree with that. And the thing is, though, that as we mature ourselves, as we do our healing, once we are committed to a path of healing and really work on that every day of our lives for the rest of our lives, and get to understand about our own shadow and how other people in the world also everyone else has a shadow too, and how many people are completely driven by that shadow, and how that manifests in the world and creates horrible toxicity in our world. And then once people learn how to do critical thinking and legitimate research with different research methodologies and learn how to communicate effectively and meaningfully what they learn. As that happens, people aren't going to be misbehaving themselves. People are going to be doing the right things. People are going to live moral, ethical lives. And then what need will there be for the government? So this is what I think. It sounds unrealistic to most people who've never thought about this before, but I've thought about it for a long time. I drive a truck for a living. I drive back and forth across the country, and I have so much time to think about things like this. And I've been driving a truck for, this year will be 20 years that I've been driving a truck back and forth across the country. And I've been thinking about this for so long. And yes, this sounds like I must be crazy for thinking that this could happen, but it absolutely has to happen. Nothing is more important than our freedom, than the freedom of every living being. And that we will never be able to secure our freedoms as long as any government exists at all. And I know that's a hard thing maybe for people to hear that haven't thought of that before, but man, I've been thinking about this for 20 years, and I become more and more convinced about it the more I think about it. And it has to happen, and therefore I believe that it can happen, and I believe that it will happen through the efforts of people who care enough about themselves and about their loved ones, friends, and family to make it happen. And people have to understand that it's not just your own freedom, one's own freedom. And it's not just about my freedom. If someone else on the other side of the planet isn't free, I'm not free because of that. If one person is being oppressed on the other side of the planet, somebody I'll never meet, I don't even know their name. If that person is being oppressed, I'm being oppressed. And every other living being is being oppressed. And that's a fact. And you don't have to think very long and hard at all to realize the horrific level of suffering happening on this planet. And the very worst of that is child trafficking and everything involved in child trafficking. It's an absolute horror beyond anything I can even find words to describe. And this is happening undeniably. It's not a conspiracy theory. I mean, government records, you can find government records easily that this is a real thing on an industrial level that is ongoing. And that couldn't happen without government cooperation, government enabling it to happen, no question about it. So that's the worst. And then there's a whole lot of other horrors happening on Earth. How many children have starved in Yemen over the last few years with the help of our taxpayer money? And now things are getting worse in Yemen. And the Federal Reserve is printing trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars, but there's not enough money to help out the people of Yemen, really. And then another thing, horror that comes to my mind is animals. How many animals die every day for human consumption? There's so many horrors. I mean, there's Chernobyl and Fukushima. I live 40 miles from the Hanford site, with plutonium was leaking when I first moved to Yakima, Washington. It's just unbelievable. And these things really have to stop. So I was going to try to keep my videos to 30 minutes apiece. So I hate to rush through the rest of this, but I can rush through the rest of this. So I'll hurry it up here. The next part of my introduction is about the question I know I'm going to hear many times: what makes you qualified? Or some people say, how dare you speak about these things? Okay, so um, I admit straight up, I have no credentials. To write this book, it would have been really great if I had a degree in psychology and epistemology and critical thinking skills, but I don't. But for 20 years, I've been driving a truck, thinking about these things, listening to audiobooks and podcasts about psychology and epistemology and critical thinking. So I have spent and I have paid my dues, even though I don't have any degrees to show it, to prove it. But I've spent time paying attention to these things. I have put in the time and effort to learn these things over a long period of time. Not that I spent all of that time on these exact things, but I have spent a lot of that time thinking about these things. So, so I was just realizing I'm over 30 minutes, but this is just the introduction. The rest of my videos, I'm really going to try to keep at 30 minutes. And then if I can't, then I'm going to try to split them, like part 1, part 2, part 3 of the same subject. Because I listen to a lot of YouTube videos and I realize people are discouraged when a video is too long. But this is just my introduction to the whole book. And so I will let this one go over. And it's really important for me to do this introduction so that people understand from the beginning, where I'm coming from and my intentions and my goals for writing the book, and housekeeping things too, which I'll get to after I continue with the what makes you qualified question. So there are 3 things that are absolutely essential that you cannot get a degree in. And people with credentials who do not have these 3 things, it kind of nullifies their credentials. So these 3 things are being honest, open-minded, and being an earnest, sincere inquirer. That's number 1. You got to have that. What good are credentials if you don't have that? Number 2 is being 100% committed to truth, morality, natural law, and freedom. The most important things in the universe. If someone has tons of credentials but doesn't have that, what good is it? Really? The third one is being 100% committed to self-reflection, that is doing shadow work, and knowing thyself, all your good side too, of course, but knowing your bad side too, definitely. So being 100% committed to self-reflection and self-correction. So look how many experts disagree with each other. It's just like, what? And so where does that leave us? When they disagree with each other and they fail to have these 3 huge qualifications, which are qualifications definitely, even though we don't have those credentials like degrees in this or that, we can have these things, which many of those experts don't have, which almost nullifies their credentials. We can have that. And when it comes to freedom, freedom is everybody's business. And if we don't change the world, those experts aren't going to change the world. Anyway, there's not enough of them, because we need 200 million just to really start getting things turned around away from totalitarianism. So that's something important to think about. And there's an advantage in being a common person. That's the advantage, is it's going to require 200 million people that don't have credentials 200 million people that care enough about their own freedom and well-being and that of others as well. People who realize that if someone on the other side of the planet who I will never meet is not free and being oppressed, that is messing with my freedom. My freedoms aren't secure if that person on the other side of the planet is not secure, or my next door neighbor. If their freedoms aren't secure, my freedoms aren't secure. Because if they could be oppressed, I could be oppressed. And so it's going to take so many of us common people, because there are not enough experts to do that. And yet, what have we been doing all along? Hoping that they will change things for us. Since they're the experts, since they're the leaders, we just donate money and time to them and they'll do it. No, they haven't done it. They're not going to do it. And there's not enough of them to do it anyway. We have to do it. So as far as being qualified to talk about these things, heck, maybe I'm not really qualified to talk about these things, but we have to talk about these things. It's not so much a matter of being qualified as it is a matter of caring enough about ourselves and each other that we do whatever it takes to stop totalitarianism. And that's us common people that have to do this. So yeah, I'm going to do it. I'm doing it. Period. And being a common person, if I can do it, then other people who haven't started doing it yet, I can prove to them that you can do it. If I can do it, you can do it. If I can do it, anybody can do it. You really can. We really can. We can do this. We have to make this happen. And we can, and we will. We have powers that most of us have not yet tapped into. And the two biggest ones are the power of our mind and the power of our voice. Everybody knows how powerful your voice is. And so the more you use your mind and your voice, the better you will get at it. It's hard at first, but the more you do it, the easier it will get. We can do it. I think that the powers that be that are ruling over us, they don't want us to believe that. They don't want us to believe that we can do it, but we can do it. And just being a common person myself, I can prove to the whole world that anybody can do it, and you can do it. If I can do it, you can do it. Anybody can do it. No question. No question about it. And again, we have to do it. This is about freedom, there's nothing more important in the whole universe. There are a few things that are just as important as freedom, but those things are inextricably interconnected with freedom. Like, truth and morality and natural law. So this is freedom we're talking about. Some people say, how dare you speak about these things? What makes you qualified? Well, that question isn't really that much of a legitimate question. Well, it could be actually, but it's more, usually when people say that, it's like an attack on you because they don't like what you're saying and they want you to shut up. So really, the legitimate question really is, how does anyone dare to not speak about these things? These are the most important things in the whole universe. And freedom is more important than in our own life. How does anyone dare to not speak about this? That's the real question. It is absolutely a sacred duty that we all have to learn and to grow and to help others to learn and grow. That's what we're here on this planet for. And our failure to do this up to this point has brought us to the very threshold of worldwide totalitarianism. Next, another thing that gives me legitimacy is that I want to know if I'm wrong about anything. I don't want to continue believing in something that's not correct. Um, it's extremely important. Everyone makes decisions. We have to make decisions in life. And if we're making decisions based on erroneous beliefs, our decisions are not going to turn out very well for us. So I am all for finding out anywhere in my mind and heart where I'm wrong. So, how many people on, mass media, social media, uh, are big on that? I'm really big on that. So I welcome constructive criticism, and even if people are just being mean, like the trolls, what I call destructive criticism, I'll just I'll check it out. I'll say, okay, maybe I am wrong about this, and I hope that'll be great if they can point something out to me that I have been wrong about, so that I can change and make better decisions in my own future, which will benefit my life. Thank you. Great. So I mean, that's another thing I think that makes me qualified is there's not a lot of people who are willing to do that, but I'm coming straight out and saying that straight up, definitely. Next, oh, one little point I wanted to make about that, as far as being willing to acknowledge one's own errors, is I always think of it like a business. If you were in business for yourself and you had a real friend who pointed something out to you that you were doing wrong, wouldn't you change it? I think most people really would, because that comes down to money, right? Well, bad decision making comes down to the things that we use money to buy, right? And could come down to money too. But when it comes to money, then people stop and listen, right? It has to do with money. But in this situation, it's just being, if you continue believing in some whatever ideology or whatever belief system or whatever that's just flat wrong, it's really gonna diminish your life. Which those are things people spend money trying to buy, right? So I hope that made sense. But it's like being a business person, really. The overall goal of getting money is to enhance your life and make your life more comfortable, right? So, same thing with having believing in things, false ideologies or religions or whatever. Man, talk about inconvenient and talk about suffering if you continue believing in those things. Because I grew up as a Jehovah's Witness, and most of my family and friends are still Jehovah's Witnesses, and they've been waiting on Armageddon for all these years and decades, and they're still waiting, and it ain't gonna happen. And I mean, talk about suffering. I'm glad I got out of that religion. I feel so sorry for all of them that are still doing it, but it's really their own fault for failing to really be a critical thinker and researcher and failing to heal. So I feel horrible for them, but it's really their own fault. I'm glad I got out. So that's a really good example of how important it is to be looking for flaws in your thinking. And so, since I am somebody who does that, I think that's part of what I could say to people who say, what makes you qualified? So, next. Okay, the final section of this introduction is some housekeeping things. I acknowledge that the way I'm doing this with my smartphone here on YouTube isn't the most professional way to do this. It's just that I'm in a hurry. But I am currently taking classes from Mark Passio, It's called How to Become the True Media. And he's showing people how to use computers to be able to do work like this more professionally. But I just can't wait. I want to get this information out there. I'm worried about some seriously bad events that might occur this fall or winter. And his classes aren't going to be over until December, and I can't wait that long. But if those bad things don't happen, then I will have learned a ton of stuff from him about computers, using computers and other equipment, to be able to do a better job at this. This is actually the second edition of my book. I put the first edition on YouTube, but I deleted all of those because my first edition is included in the second edition. So this second edition is much improved over the first edition. And so by the end of the year, I hope to have all of these videos up on YouTube, the whole second edition up on YouTube. And then I might just start right back over and do a third edition using the expertise that I will gain from taking Mark Passio's class. So I'm hoping to be able to do that, but I can't wait. I cannot wait any longer. I am in a hurry to get this information out there before people start killing each other. Killing has already started a little bit. You know, how many people have been killed since George Floyd was killed? I mean, aren't people supposed to want killing to stop? And yet there has been more killing since then. And it could get a lot worse this fall or winter. I'm really worried about that. That's why I'm in a hurry. So, okay, I'm quoting a lot of different people in this book. And I will try to give, whenever I quote someone, I will also try to give their contact information, not like email, but like website or YouTube channel, whatever. So I'll be quoting from a lot of different people. And particularly there's this one YouTube channel called Rebel Wisdom, which I highly recommend, except that I do not agree with them about something that I won't even go into right now. There's no point in it. But the point I'm trying to make is that just because I quote from somebody else and point out some good work that they did doesn't mean I agree with them about everything. So that needs to be made clear. And when people make that error, that's called the ad hominem fallacy. Just because Joe Blow said something makes it wrong, or Sally Sue said something, she's automatically right. Nope. That is the ad hominem fallacy, because you don't like something about Joe Blow and you do like something about Sally Sue. You don't like him, you do like her, so she's right, he's wrong, no matter what they say. Come on! That's crazy. I can't believe people are still doing that.